The View is not my cup of tea, to say the least. Most of the time we've covered them on this show, I've gone after them and disagreed with them, and that goes without saying. I'm sure all of you know that. But out of nowhere, shocking and surprising, they decided to turn on Kyrsten Sinema, even after the bathroom incident, when everybody in polite society, all the civility and decorum humpers, were crying for her. Turns out they paused for a minute and reflected and said, yeah, but why are these protesters going after her? Why is she obstructing the entire Build Back Better agenda, which includes things like universal pre-K and childcare and free college and all these wonderful policies? Who is she really representing? So I'm just as surprised by this as you are. This is an amazing clip. Take a look and then we'll discuss.
It's true. Biden's facing criticism for downplaying these confrontations, but I mean, do the American people deserve answers from these two? I mean, they have been very vague on why they're standing in the way.
Well, you know, Sinema is MIA all over the place. Yeah. She's not around. They call her to have a meeting. They try to get her on the phone. Mm-hmm. She doesn't. She's like a missing person. So this is the only alternative they have.
But why are we demonizing moderates? So Republicans and Democrats in the Senate came up with an infrastructure package that I think most Americans can get on board with.
Right.
It's AOC and the squad in the House that are demanding we have this $3.5 trillion package that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. I don't blame Sinema and Manchin. I blame the House Democrats.
That's not true. Actually, what happened is that Sinema and Manchin wanted two bills passed, right? They decided that they wanted to break up bills so that they could get bipartisan support for two bills and that they were going to vote for both bills. They reneged on that and they only decided to vote on the smaller bills so that they could get what they wanted. So the progressives then say, no. You actually said that you were going to vote for both. So the progressives are the ones that are supporting Biden's agenda. And by the way, Biden's agenda is supported by the majority of Americans. Right. 66% of Americans, 61% of independents, 39% of Republicans, and also 65% of Arizona likely voters support the plan. So who is Senator Sinema representing?
But this is the infrastructure plan. You've got to separate that from this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill,
which is an infrastructure bill.
But that's separate from the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, roads, bridges, cybersecurity. That's important. Most of us agree on that.
Yeah.
Things that transformational, I would agree we need Republican support and Democrat support. I don't think we should be doing transformational legislation without any buy-in from the other side.
But you're not going to get buy-in from the other side because they decided before they knew what was going on. They were like, before you talk,
not in the Senate though. Republicans in the Senate back the infrastructure bill. It's House liberals that are blocking.
Yeah, but let's take a look at what the squad wants. Okay, expanded Medicare. We need that. Paid family and medical leave. We need that. I certainly need it. An extended child tax credit to get people out of poverty. Universal pre-K. Why not give all children a leg up, not just kids with money? Tuition-free community college. The country's getting dumber. Send them to college. Enhanced child nutrition programs, except for that woman on the Fox the other day who said she's against free lunches for children because some children can afford the lunch.
And I just want to know, because Joy read off what I think are actually very important policies most Americans support. It has to be paid for. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Tax cuts for the rich.
But this is not...
Bring it back up again.
Well, and so that's the discussion that needs to be had, but this bill is not paid for as it is.
But Sinema's having meetings with people who are against taxing the rich. And what kind of a Democrat is she? You're in the wrong party, Kyrsten.
And let's also mention that Republicans keep on saying, how is it going to be paid for? How is it going to be paid for? They never said that when we were talking about tax cuts for the rich, first of all. Right. And second of all, this is over 10 years. It's over 10 years.
When it is something someone wants, they find the money. They find the money. And this is not, and if it doesn't get done now, it's not going to get done. It's just not going to happen. Your roads, all of this stuff is not going to get fixed. So it's very simple to me. Yeah, I'm going to follow you wherever you are if you're not responding to me as someone who elected you. I'm trying to keep you in office because I tell you, when I start voting and you've been null and void and nowhere to be found, you're out. Because you're not taking care of business. When you tell me Arizona says, listen, we want this.
66.
This is your job. Your job is not to play with Manchin. Your job is to take care of what we need in Arizona and what we need in wherever you are. That's your job. That's why we put you in, because we thought you could do it better. And here you are. Just blocking stuff.
And what's mind-boggling is that that Manchin's constituents can use all of the things I just listed.
Yes.
What did I just watch? It's like the ghost of Kyle Kulinski got into every View host except that one who was still massively cucked and defeated in the argument. What? So let's run through it. I mean, almost every part of this was fantastic. First point was, in the discussion about the protesters who followed Kyrsten Sinema into the bathroom to say, you better support this bill, they say, well, Sinema's been MIA. So what do you want these people to do? You don't do nothing? Sit there and take it? I mean, Kyrsten Sinema hasn't held a town hall in 3 years. When constituents call her office, they can't get through to her. It's impossible to get through to her. At the same time, she's going around and doing a cocktail circuit tour of corruption, raising $5,800 a pop from all the corporations who are lined up against this bill. She just took $750,000 from Big Pharma, and then she turned around and opposed lower drug prices, which is something that she previously not only supported, but ran ads on. Hey, I'm going to DC to lower your drug prices, and now all of a sudden, whoops, totally disagree. But don't look at the $750,000 I just took from Big Pharma. Even the View hosts are like, really? We're talking about decorum and civility and following somebody into a bathroom? Like that's the most egregious thing that's ever happened in the world? Guys, don't get it twisted. And I've said this a million times, I'll keep saying it. Is the tactic itself borderline? Well, absolutely. You know, nobody wants to get followed in a bathroom, obviously. But when people make the point, like, what if it was your mom, or what if it was your sister, or what if it was your girlfriend, or whatever, that's a terrible point. Because my mom, my sister, and my girlfriend didn't take $750,000 from Big Pharma and kill lower drug prices, which will lead to people dying. Do you understand me? Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? People will die because Kyrsten Sinema is corrupt. They will pass away. They will ration their insulin and not make it. They will cut their pills in half and not make it. I'm more outraged at the civility and decorum breach of people dying from high drug prices than I am about people hearing somebody tinkle or fart. And if you don't like that, you can go cry about it. So it's not a good point. The substance of a protest also matters. Yeah, sure, if some right-winger followed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into the bathroom to chastise her for not being pro-war or some shit, then that would be stupid, and I would argue against the substance of the protest and what they're telling her to do. But if somebody follows George W. Bush into the bathroom and says, hey man, you're a war criminal, as long as nobody gets hurt and nobody gets punched in the face and there's nobody touching anybody and there's no physical altercation, I'm going to say, that guy's right. And yay, followed him into the bathroom, but I don't really care, because what's much worse is the hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians that George W. Bush is responsible for killing. He has blood on his hands. So people are trying to do this weird, like, hypocrisy gotcha on this. There is zero hypocrisy. So let me get this straight. We all agree, violence against people for political ends is wrong. Correct, I agree. That's called terrorism. Most people agree property destruction is wrong as well. So you can't do that either. Okay, so you can't do violence. You can't do property destruction. What's left? What's left is be rude and mean and direct and upfront and shame your congresspeople and make them feel uncomfortable until that you force them to represent the people and do their job. That's all that's left. That's it. And now people turn around and say, you can't do that either. Fuck off. Fuck off with your civility and decorum nonsense. Okay, they go on to say, and I'm amazed they pointed this out on The View. Remember how terrible The View treated Bernie and, you know, how much they were pro-Hillary. So normally they're terrible. But here they say, Manchin and Sinema are the ones who went back on the deal, which is true. Remember, the deal was announced, reconciliation deal. You got the infrastructure package, about $1 trillion. Then you got the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure package, the reconciliation deal. The bills are linked. That was the deal. So now they pull out of it, and some idiots are trying to blame the progressives. They're just sticking to the original deal. They are of their word. Then they cite poll numbers. They bring up the specific provisions, which, by the way, it's a huge problem. Media Matters did a thing on this. Most of the coverage of this bill is solely horse race coverage. Hey, where do the centrist Democrats stand? Where do the progressive Democrats stand? And where do the Republicans stand? And they say, oh, the $3.5 trillion number, and they talk about that number. Very few pieces on this really discuss everything that's in the bill. Because if you do discuss what's in the bill, people love it. There's a new poll that came out the other day. Only like 30 to 35% opposition to this bill in the country. It's nearly 60% support in the entire country. That means you have the entire left supports it, no matter if they're moderate or left. Independents support it, and even a lot of Republicans support it. Almost half of Republicans support a lot of this stuff. So when you talk about the specifics, well, then it paints a clear picture as to who the good guys are. So most of the media is not doing that. Well, shockingly, they're doing it on The View. They asked the question, who is Sinema representing? I have the answer. The answer is her donors. They talk about tax cuts for the rich. They weren't paid for. So if you want to pay for this thing, just raise taxes on the rich. 100% correct. They tell Kyrsten Sinema, you're in the wrong party. They accurately bring up the bill, even though it's $3.5 trillion, is over 10 years. Over 10 years. So that's way less than we spend on the military, for example. And then it's pointed out, if it's not done now, it's not going to get done. Because what's going to happen? Democrats are probably going to get wiped out in the midterms, no matter what, even if they pass this thing, because they're at such a disadvantage with voting rights and gerrymandering and things of that nature. So when's it going to get done? A decade from now? 2 decades from now? Can the climate wait that long? Can the American people wait that long with our terrible social safety net? Probably not. So yeah, when is it going to get done if it's not done right now? Listen, the final point I want to make about this, and I think this is probably the most important point, is strength works. Strength works. If this should teach the left anything, it's that. So, and you guys know this has been my beat for years now. That's why I was one of the co-founders of Justice Democrats. Now, in many ways, they've let me down. On this reconciliation bill, the way they're playing it, they have not let me down because they held the line. And when you argue from a position of strength, when you puff your chest out and say, no, I'm right, you can go screw yourself, people go, damn, that's some confidence. And then they're curious about why you're doing what you're doing, and maybe they look into it. And that's exactly what happened here. They saw strength among the progressives. They looked into why are they doing what they're doing, and they accurately come away with the fact that Manchin and Sinema are the problem. Now, don't get it twisted. I think one of the reasons why they have the leeway to make these points is because it's also Biden and Pelosi who happen to be correct on this issue. And so it's a lot easier when the milquetoast corporate Democrats are with them. They feel like they can make this argument. But at the end of the day, they're correct. They're correct. So the takeaway is hold the line more. Use the Tea Party tactics more. Be aggressive more. Drive a hard bargain more. Because then, as the old saying goes, and I'm going to butcher it, but this is in the ballpark of what it is, if you shoot for the stars, you might reach the moon. If you just shoot for the moon, you probably won't get anywhere. So keep shooting for the stars. I don't know what's going to happen with this moving forward. I had an interesting conversation about this the other day with a journalist. I don't know if he wants me to mention his name, so I won't. But, there's a school of thought out there that Sinema and Manchin would even vote for the $3.5 trillion bill. If the line is held enough. I don't agree with that. I don't think that they actually would vote for the $3.5 trillion bill because I think all they want is that smaller, semi-corporate standard infrastructure bill, the roughly $1 trillion bill. So I don't think they would actually support the $3.5 trillion, but because progressives are driving such a hard bargain, you might be able to get a deal that's about $2 trillion. Now, I told you guys from day one when we were following this, and when the bill was unveiled, I knew the $3.5 trillion wasn't going to make it all the way through the reconciliation process unscathed. That's not the way it works. When you go to reconciliation, you have to reconcile and figure out what stays in and what doesn't. But I will say this. We're in a decent position because as long as the bill doesn't have means testing, and as long as they don't strip too many programs from it, then we're in a position where the left can and should support it. And obviously, Bernie's word will be huge on this. If Bernie looks at a final deal and says, I'm giving it my blessing, then the left will vote for it. If not, then they won't. But yeah, if you can get a $2 trillion or $2.5 trillion bill, you could just shorten the window of some of these programs. If they're funded for 10 years, say, hey, instead of funding universal pre-K for 10, let's fund it for 5, but let's not means test it. Well, that's still a good idea, because after 5 years, it's not like people are going to want to give that up. It's sort of like with Medicare and Medicaid. Once you gave it to people, it was impossible to take it back, because if you did, it's political suicide. So it's a similar thing here. If you just shorten the window, it could still be effective. So that's what I got my eye on for. What are the details of a final bill? Obviously, if there's no climate stuff in there, no deal. If there's means testing, there's no deal. If they strip out some of what I view are red line programs, no deal. But if you meet those basics and it's $2 trillion or more, then I would get on board. So I don't know. We'll see. But randomly, credit to The View for getting something wildly correct. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.